Hello every folks, and welcome to a bit of a discussion here on the Shapes game with a funny name, Project Triangle Strategy. A name which, I understand it's a working title, but sweet goodness, it takes some effort to come up with something that bad. Anyway, so, first of all, I have to say, I really, really hope this one succeeds. In many ways, it's kind of what I was hoping to see come out for a good long while, namely, you know, something kind of ogre-esque moving forward. Now, that said, I just want to get a couple things kind of off my chest right off the bat here. A, the thing is ogre-esque at a surface level so far. That, I mean, in terms of its overall depth and everything else, that remains to be seen, but everything I've seen so far is very surface level. That actually said, about 95% of the comments that I've seen for this particular game have been pretty much a smattering of, you know, oh my god, it's the second coming of FFT, it's the only thing that ever existed in this genre, sweet goodness. And it's sad to me because there's so many things. Like, this game is the equivalent of essentially the new kid showing up to class, copying everyone's homework and getting extra credit for it. Because for some reason when it comes to this one, the FFT comparison is all over the dang place. It seems to be all anyone's ever played. Like, if we're just looking at the base mechanics here, we're talking about, like, okay, the wandering around, Shining Force. You have the kind of point system, looks a lot like Phoenix Point. You got the silences or whatever system, where you're essentially doing cool maneuvers to get points to unlock skills. That's XCOM 2 right there. You got your general movement style. It's very ogre reminiscent, but the maps themselves are very they're Fire Emblem. Sorry. You have a lot of your well, I want to say map interactions. Truth be told, nothing so far I've seen in the entire genre matches either Fell Seal or XCOM 2 in that regard. But yeah. If you wanted a modern, like, just the full potential of what the actual FFT formula was, look up Fell Seal. I mean, it surprises me how many folks didn't realize that FFT had, like, friggin' 5 different spin-offs. It's kind of crazy. I mean, we're talking about like three actual official ones. Not to mention you had Fell Seal, and then you had what's the other one? I can't remember right now. A lot of folks were talking about Faye being particularly good. I haven't seen that one myself. Everything that I saw in it seemed fairly basic, but still, the overall formula was done quite a bit. And in terms of a spiritual successor, yeah, Funny Shapes game is not it. Whatsoever, like on any level, so I'm not sure where that particularly comes from. I mean, the basic idea of that one was cross-classing, and then you're essentially going with 5-man squads for, usually just achieving some small objective there, and then your whole actual gameplay loop is building up your team, coming up with all kinds of crazy answers with every single particular unit. The actual thing that's going on there, the actual, system in play is a bit more similar to Ogre, though I'd say, again, kind of like a surface level version of it, where essentially everybody has a couple of specializations, you have a bigger map, and everyone's movement is generally limited, so ranged classes tend to see a bit more of a power spike. But yeah, again, a lot of that seemed to be on a surface level. The actual unique stuff that it did, so for example, the plot decisions and stuff like that, again, I want... Like, this is mostly just because I've played this game to death, but on one level I want to say, hey, you know, the usual, like, hey, Ogre did it too kind of thing, but not really. They have a system where you have to convince characters to vote on your side and whatever else. And while there's a little bit of that here, it doesn't take it to quite the level that seems to be going on in Funny Shapes game. But that said... good God, I hope they do something about the voice acting. That mess is really hard to listen to, especially like the in-battle stuff. Now, this is kind of a personal taste thing, but I really don't like when they have like a little voice line with every single action that somebody takes, especially for, you know, any kind of SRPG where they're going to be taking dozens and dozens of turns, and you're inevitably going to run into that situation where you're trying to farm something out towards the end of a particular fight. And suddenly, you know, you're listening to the same snippets of dialogue over and over and over and over and over, and you're like, where's the freaking mute button? Please tell me there's a mute button somewhere. So there's that. On another thing, I personally just don't like that there didn't seem to be generics. Again, it's too soon to know if that's actually the case. I like me some generics, so hopefully that's the case. It didn't seem to have much customization going on, and in general, it seemed like it was going to be a fairly Fire Emblem-esque situation as far as that goes. So we'll see if that ends up changing at some point, but as it stands, it didn't really seem like that was going to be the case. Too soon to know. Again, it's just a demo so far. They're still taking feedback on it. That's kind of what scares me about the whole everybody can only seem to compare it to FFT thing, because I really hope they don't take that as, hey, we actually have to turn this into FFT now, because that would kind of strip it of its unique stuff. Now, for a lot of its kind of inner systems there, I was mentioning earlier in terms of other games it copied, the point system, like the TP or whatever system, reminds me a whole lot of how Phoenix Point did it. As much as that game could have used improvements in other factors, the way that they handled turn units seemed like a pretty solid evolution of what XCOM was trying to do, wherein you essentially had kind of like a series of instead of full-on like turn units like old-timey XCOMs and things like that. It was essentially everything had a smaller chunk of points that it took, which is a cool way of doing it. Like I would still say, if you're looking for the modern kind of standard to hold up as far as like a modern SRPG that seemed to check every box, I know, at least for me personally, that was still XCOM 2. You had your customization for your squad. You had your interesting classes. You had your mixes of different roles, you had your different builds you could do, you had your use items, which personally I really, really love to see when there's stuff in this genre where their actual equipment is going beyond, like, this is your hit and stick. Like, for example, you have maybe the option to go, put some, say somebody's got a crossbow and you give them, like, a grappling gun or something, they can go on it or something like that. That kind of stuff, it just always kind of did it for me. And, I mean, as an example, this game right here ended up getting a mod over the last few years where you basically had that exact thing, where you could run around with grappling claws installed into gauntlets, or even in the base game version of this, you ended up having a whole bunch of items that had all kinds of weirdly specific uses that didn't seem like they had much of a use at first, but then with a little bit of creativity, they could be super interesting. It's like, for example, there was the ability to walk on lava, which didn't seem like very much until you ran to a volcano map or something like that, and you had an archer standing in the middle of a volcano completely out of touch of everybody. It's too soon to tell. I just really didn't see much beyond the surface level as far as triangle strategy went. By the way, on the name, I'm curious to see if anybody else is potentially wondering if the name wasn't so much the whole we swear we're not copying Law, Chaos, and Neutral thing, but instead maybe a dig at the fact that Unsung Story was supposed to use triangles at some point. Obviously there isn't going to be much to back that particular thing up, but it's just, I don't know, as soon as I saw that, I was like, hey, did they do the thing that Matsuno was going on about for a while? No? Okay, cool. Good to know that still that's a terrible idea, but, I just kind of thought it was pretty funny. For those that didn't know, Unsung Story is basically like the FFT and Tactics Ogre director guy. He had this idea at some point that there needed to be triangles instead of squares. That was like the next evolution and everything. Let's just say that idea ended up getting ditched pretty quickly, just in terms of being really bizarre to balance. So, either way, that's neither here nor there. I just kind of thought it was interesting. Now, that all said, back to the whole quote-unquote service level thing. Why do I keep saying that? Well, the thing is, there's a lot of debuffs going around. That is definitely to its credit. That's good. That said, it definitely seemed like the end game of that whole situation was going to be some, push the death button power moves. It seemed like that's what they were going with the spear guy. The ye old, I'm currently experiencing a pleasant breeze on my neck guy. Which, by the way, I don't know. I know for a lot of folks it was supposed to be a kind of emotional moment of like, look, the guy that everyone knew was going to die died. What a shocker! Aren't you shocked that this happened yet again, like it always does? Anybody else find it super weird that he just sort of disappears as soon as his head does? Like, they just couldn't really be bothered Like I saw one review in particular going on like, oh, this is the deepest thing ever. I can't believe somebody in the genre would do something this deep. Yeah, okay, that's adorable, but yeah, no, I just found it a little bit funny that they're like, yeah, his entire body just sort of went poof at that point. I know it was probably a bug, but you know, or at least something they would hopefully fix down the line. But I just personally found it a little bit hilarious. Like, did he just disappear that guy entirely? But anyway, so yeah, as far as basic mechanics go, there were debuffs flying around. That's good, but it didn't seem like they were going to be the biggest deal in the world, because they did specifically go out of their way to mention, hey, the demo is going to be harder than the actual game, and it didn't seem like it was giving any folks that much of an actual issue. Again, what I saw compared to a lot of things. And one of them was Tactics Ogre with an Instagram filter, and I don't know. I didn't see that same thing. Like, for those unfamiliar with this whole series, its whole shtick is kind of like trench warfare, more or less. That the fights usually end up devolving into something like this right here, where you've got a few characters holding the front line. You've got some that are running around trying to flank around and accomplish something there. It's entirely about exploiting breaches more than direct overpowering stats. At least, ideally, it is. There's a whole lot to discuss on that particular one. But anyway, like, ideally, you wouldn't have one character that would be able to just power through a front line, because that's just not how that works. So as far as I could see, it seemed like the eventual end game was going to be those, power moves and things like that. I'd like to be wrong, but it's hard to say at this point. From what I've seen, that seemed to be what they were going with. That was kind of going to be considered the kind of big payoff at the end. Now, that all said, I was kind of excited at first to see the terrain effects and things like that. I, again, don't know how much of an effect that's really going to have. It seemed kind of Divinity-esque. It didn't seem like it would really be the big make or break thing, as far as I could tell. Maybe there will be other stuff that's a bit cooler down the line. So potentially a cool thing there. Though that said, kind of awkwardly segues into another thing that I meant to cover earlier, which is just the general speed of the game. It seemed somewhat snappy. That's good, but a lot of the animations seemed weirdly lengthy. Like, they kind of jarring. Like, especially some of the healing ones and stuff like that. Seemed like they would just kind of stutter out a little bit, and then it would take a little bit of a moment. So hopefully that ends up getting fixed by the time it's out. What else? So as far as learning skills in the middle of fights, that's a pretty neat thing there. Again, kind of makes me think of Shining Force in that regard. A lot of it seemed to be seriously just like a mix of everything in the genre. Like, I saw one review potentially put it as they just sort of were making a Octopath sequel, and then we're just playing a bunch of SRPGs, and we're like, hey, these sound like fun mechanics, and then they just sort of started adding them in at random. Like, to kind of wrap it up here, the way I see it, when it comes to any new SRPG, if it's just copying older stuff at random, it's not really going to be sitting there as something that you want to go back to over and over and over. It might be a novelty thing. For example, story-wise, it seemed like it copied pretty much everything. Like, what Tactics Ogre started a while ago, that's not even fair either. Like, honestly, it kind of started off with Fire Emblem in terms of all that. In terms of the attempt at deeper writing, that started with TO. But yeah. It's like Fire Emblem kind of started the whole, we gotta copy the whole War of the Three Kingdoms thing, and then just, it sort of copy-pasted from there. With TO, it was more, again, it was a little bit deeper, but it still was using that same kind of structure. It really just seems like a copy-paste job as far as that goes. As far as I could tell, it didn't seem like anything special. Good God, that voice work is just bad. I hope it comes with a mute button. I'm pretty sure at this point it's probably getting a bit late to go and re-record everything, but it seemed like fairly standard, hey, look, we have an anime protagonist kind of thing. As far as that goes, like standard old voices you've heard a million times for the same kind of generic archetypes. You've got your standard wise guy, tactician guy, you've got your got your sneaky person, you've got your protector person, just same old, same old. Didn't really see any particularly interesting twists on anybody, aside from being able to, hand over one of your people to potentially change a fight. I hate to sound negative because I really do want it to succeed. It's just, every time that I think about any part of it, it's just like, here's where it copied its homework from somebody else. So I'd love to be proven wrong on that particular one, because, I really do want a sequel here. But to wrap up, like I was saying, there's 2 contemporaries, technically kind of 3, I guess. But there's a whole bunch of modern SRPGs, much more than many folks seem to realize or acknowledge, that have done a lot of interesting things as far as the genre goes, and that really should be the standard to follow. Like, for example, it's technically a roguelike, but have you played Battle Brothers? I mean, as far as interesting strategic situations go, that was really awesome. As far as interesting, just like giant map-wide, fights and whatever else with interesting hero squads, XCOM 2, it did it awesomely. You might say, again, it doesn't have, swords or wizards, dude. It has friggin' psychics with laser swords. It is 100% still fantasy. Not to mention, it's pretty much got a similar situation as far as writing and whatever else. And honestly, I can take that a bit more seriously than the same old, oh my god, I gotta save the royal family bullcrap again. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure this is different for some folks, but yeah, not a fan of anime tropes. Anyway, yeah, as far as modern stuff goes, Fell Seal, like, that game is astounding, and considering that the folks are willing to put up with the visual weirdness of Funny Shapes game here, I think you can stomach Fell Seal. It's really, honestly, I kind of prefer the art style in some ways. Because again, instead of Unreal Engine plus Instagram filters, you actually have a game that was visually designed after what it was built on there. It looks good. I mean, in my opinion, it really grows on you, especially considering 2 people made it, and it's easily the best cross-classing simulator in the genre as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, it's got a lot to potentially compete with. I mean, even if you want like a bunch of interesting class combos and just interesting move combos and things like that, honestly, I still consider Into the Breach an SRPG as well. There's a lot of things that are technically classed as different genres that use a lot of SRPG mechanics a lot better than a lot of mainline SRPGs out there, which kind of makes it a bit sad to me when you see situations that a game has not really brought too much new to the table, but is credited as the second coming of Jesus there. It's I guess that's kind of why it makes me a bit frustrated. There's so many amazing games out there. Again, if you want another FFT, like, if you want to see what that formula can really do, go play some Fell Seal. Don't expect a surface level attempt to copy 20 different games to copy that same feeling for you. But yeah, this all sounded weirdly negative. I really do hope it succeeds. It's just, I always end up going down that same mental route of like, man, it's every step of the way, it's another surface level thing. I can't help but feel that way. I do like the open world mechanics, like the being able to use character skills in the open world. But again, it's brief. It just kind of comes and goes, and that's it. Man, there's no way to make this not so negative, is there? Well, anyway, we'll see how disliked this gets. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. I'd love to be proven wrong. I really, really do want another good entry into the genre. I'm not personally feeling it. Like, usually there's sort of a gut feeling that comes out, like, even if, like, hell, this game right here, initially I didn't like it, but I had a gut feeling that there was more here. And then for years I kept having that same thing, like, I don't know, but something feels like there's more there, and I kept going back to it, and yeah, there's so much more than meets the eye here. But anyways, that's its whole other story. Actually, we'll be putting up a review of this one 10 years after playing it and whatever else, just to cover some of that craziness. But yeah, that's about that. You guys have a good one. Take care, and looking forward to seeing the criticism on it. You have a good one.